And that day is one of the hardest days of my life. So that day, it felt like everything in my body was leaving me, like all my blood, all the energy that I had. I was having an out of body experience. It was a summer day and I was freezing cold in the middle of the street. And when you go through an extremely traumatic event, a lot of people describe it the same way. And I found that out by listening to other people's stories. And this is kind of how they describe it.
This is the moment we've all been waiting for. It's time! Presenting the champion of the world, Hell, WamBam, Armando!
Yo, it's your boy, and it's WamBam Wednesday, and it's your boy Phil WamBam Benamino, and it's a show about ordinary people who have done extraordinary things, and today's no different. But as always, we ask first, the show is free, so please subscribe. Go on there and subscribe it, like it, share it. Feel free to throw in some comments too. We'll take the positive ones and the negative ones. We want to learn. So tell us what you think about it. Before I introduce this next guest, I just want you to know he's a veteran. That's right. He fought for our country in Afghanistan. He's from Ohio. That's right. He's from Ohio, but he's here in Georgia now today. He's married with 2 children. And I'm not going to lie, today's episodes might tug at you a little bit. And I'm going to tell you why. If you're a person that's been sexually abused and didn't know what to do, tune in. And if you're a person that knows somebody who have been sexually abused, but you didn't know what to do, turn the volume up. Because today's story is about that. This gentleman, Seth Gehle, is here today to tell his story about what happened to him as a child, growing up, and everything in between. So first, let's welcome Seth. Seth, nice to see you, man. I appreciate you coming in today.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. Thank you for having me. This is awesome. So It's always, like I said earlier, it's always an honor to share my story and hopefully make an impact on this world.
Well, first of all, I got to tell you, first and foremost, the amount of courage you have to be here to share this story is huge. And I'm excited because there are so many people in the world today that have been victims of what you went through and don't know what to do about it. And some people just living with it. And some people have witnessed it and kind of just buried it and stuff. And what you're doing now, coming open about it, is amazing, especially being a man.
Yeah.
And stuff. So, tell the viewers a little bit. I mean, I understand from what I was told from before that you were actually molested by another man.
Yeah. So yeah, that's true. It happened twice. Well, two separate occasions. Two, I guess I'll say, abusers. I'm not.
There's 2 different people.
The first time, yeah. So the first time I was like 5. I don't really remember that. It's like a very distant memory. There was a babysitter. There was some people that I lived with. Kind of lived with, kind of didn't. When I was really young, I mean, I grew up with a single mother of 3. So a little context behind all this. Growing up with a single mother, you're already at risk. When you grow up without a father, you're at a higher risk. You grow up in poverty, the risk of these things happening just keeps going up. And there's actually there's a ton of statistics out there about this stuff, but specifically to when a child is in a bad place, it's just extremely likely it's going to happen. It is alarming and disturbingly likely. So, yeah, the first time, I was with a babysitter, and I very just distantly remember it, but I know because I reported to my grandparents when it first happened. And so my grandparents knew about it, and they tried to save us at the time. And Children Protective Services, CPS, unfortunately, they kind of have their hands tied behind their backs because we have so much freedom in America. We don't have to let anybody in our house. So if I make an accusation, I've got to have pretty hard proof to come in and make a change.
Well, let me take you back real quick.
Yeah.
How did Grandma and Grandpa know about? Is this something as a child you remember going to them and telling them, or did they witness it? Did they walk in on it? What happened?
Yeah. So I don't remember telling them. I know that my grandparents knew that it happened, and we would go see my grandparents every now and then when I was really young. We'd go hang out with them on the weekends, and we would talk to them occasionally about certain things, mostly me. My sisters really wouldn't say much. And a part of that was because my mom in the house, in the environment that we lived in, she had a very, a rule that was what happens in our house stays in our house. And so we never said anything outside the house. Even in school, we'd get counseled by like CPS would come in and talk to us in school. And we always said, it's none of your business. It's none of your business. So I don't really remember telling my grandma, but she knew that happened.
This was one of the things you said. Your mom. This was one of her rules. Now I got to ask. Do you feel like was your mom a good person at the time, or was she, did she struggle with with things? If there was a lot of drugs around, like why would she say that unless she thought her children were seeing stuff that they probably shouldn't see?
Few reasons. So one, being a single mother, we were left at home alone a lot. Like I can remember, and 20 years.
Now, how old were you?
When it first started happening, first grade, kindergarten, first grade.
Really? Now you said so you had siblings with you as well?
Yeah, my two sisters. Yep.
And how old were they?
We're all 1 year apart. So we were,
Okay.
my mom had us all, I think 17, 18, 19 or 18, 19, 20, like back to back to back. Me and my older sister she's my only natural sibling. We are 11 months apart. My younger sister, we're like 13 months apart. So we're like boom, boom, boom. And by the time I was in like kindergarten, first grade, I remember coming home from school and being alone. And we had we always had like a list of chores and things to do. And so I think because we were always alone, that was a reason to not tell anybody what was going on so that she wouldn't lose us.
Right.
Yeah. And truthfully, I mean, from what I can remember at that young, up until I was about 8, I would say 8 or 9, I don't think anything really terrible was happening. I say that, it's funny. I say that, but you would never leave your kids alone. Like you just wouldn't,
Right.
like there's things you would do. So I think that's why she had that rule. But then she did start to smoke. And this is 20 years ago when smoking weed was like the worst thing you could do.
Mm.
So that was a big deal where she would tell us not to tell anybody that because she would get in trouble. She'd lose us. And she would tell us that.
So you knew she was smoking. She
Oh,
was
yeah.
right in front of you.
Yeah. Smoking weed was like, it was just not a big deal. Smoking, drinking, like we saw that a lot growing up. And so desensitized to it, it just wasn't a big deal. So yeah, being that she was a single mother, occasionally she wouldn't be able to take care of us. And that's when we would end up in these different houses. And I don't remember these people that we would live with from time to time, but I do remember like very faintly, one of them molested us.
Now let me ask you, you said you
me.
lived in, okay, so I'm trying to understand and,
Yep.
and respect the fact of what you know, what you
Yeah.
remember and stuff, but did defects come in and maybe separate you from your mom at a point where then they put you in a house? No. Okay. So you were left at a home. You don't know what home was. It was just for a certain period of time and that person ended up molesting you.
Yeah. So they were like a family friend kind of. And one of the kids was like a older teenager and he kind of had us he had me in his bed. Excuse me. I keep saying us, but he had me in his bed. And, that wasn't anything serious. It was kind of just like touching and exposing himself to me. And, I very, like I said, very distinctly, almost like a dream. I know it happened because I reported it to my grandma and my grandma will remember that for a long time.
Now, where did your grandma live at the time? Was she close by or she lived in the same state? Or
yeah, like, 20 minutes away, 30 minutes away, kind of. She lived out in the country. We lived in the city.
So how did you report to did you see her one day or did you actually call her?
We were there on the weekend and I think that she knew we were in a bad place. She knew my mom, she knew my dad was in prison. So she knew we were in a bad place.
What was he in prison for?
So my dad, I think when I was about 2, it's a he said, she said, but on my mom's side of the story is that he got mad at her and stabbed her behind the ear and then he was sent away. So, yeah. He went to prison for a long time. I mean, I don't have any memories. My first memory of meeting my father was in prison. I went to see him in prison, and
how old were you then?
About 7 or 8.
Okay.
Yeah, that's like my first memory that I can recall. There's pictures of us as me as a baby with him, but I obviously don't remember that.
How about today? Maybe you guys have a relationship today or no?
Not really. No, unfortunately, he's I would have it. They just can't. They're stuck in a bad place. They're stuck, and that's about the best way you can put it. And I can't exhaust any more of my efforts to be a part of that relationship, really. So that's kind of and that's with my mom too. I can't, I can't go up there, go to Ohio and visit people like that just because it's
Okay, so they're not
yeah,
stuck. They're actually they made a choice,
sure,
and it's not in the same. It's not lying in the same where
exactly,
you are.
exactly. Yeah, we don't have the
Okay.
same values.
Okay,
Yeah,
that makes sense.
yeah,
And it's unfortunate. And who knows? Maybe they can come around, and maybe some of the awareness may change some things
sure,
down
yeah,
the road. So all right. So grandma and grandpa know about this now.
yeah.
What was that conversation like? Was grandma and grandpa angry at the time? Like what?
I think what happened was they knew something was wrong, so they kind of started reading books to us, and they were trying to educate us on like the birds and the bees, for example.
Mm,
And I think that's when I think it was like one of those conversations where I was like, "Hey, like so and so touched us or touched me," and then they tried to do something about it, and
well,
there was nothing you could
keep
do.
saying us.
Yeah.
Were your sisters a part of this too? Like,
No.
did anything ever happen to them though?
No, it was
Okay.
yeah, it was
So,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
All
I
right.
keep saying us. My sisters were with me, so the molestation part happened to me, and then the everything else was us, as in like the abuse, the drugs, everything else that we were around was like
With
an
the
us,
family.
yeah, as a family situation. So,
Yeah.
but I remember telling my grandma that, and I don't remember what happened. I know the guy was not punished for it. I know nothing happened basically because there was no cold hard facts, and like I said, you can't go into a house and do anything. And then
They keep you away from them at least at that point in time.
honestly, no,
No, so you're
no,
still
yeah, like
hanging out over there.
yeah, I remember going back to that house like multiple times. So yeah, but there was another time I told my grandma that my mom was smoking more, or there was a lot of people in our house smoking weed a lot, and I came home and my sisters told my mom that I said that, and my mom like beat my ass like bad for talking, for
Right.
speaking up. So it kind of traps you in that place.
Hmm.
So
So obviously, you're a boy now
yep,
and stuff. But tell us about how it happened again.
yeah. So um, it's when I was like 10, I had I'll call him I had an older friend, and for the sake of this story, I'll call him Jacob. It's a fake name, but I'll
Sure.
call him Jacob to protect him. So I had an older friend. He's about 5 years older than me, and he lived right around the corner. And I would hang out with this guy a lot. And so Jacob kind of knew that I had a jacked up life at home, and he took me under his wing as like a young friend, like a little brother almost.
Sure.
And
Kind of like a
so
big brother. type
yeah, yeah,
thing for you.
yeah. That's kind of how we were. And
Yeah.
he was like my protector. He was bigger, stronger, and oddly enough, I always found myself finding these kind of kids because I was really small as a young kid, and I got bullied a lot, and I got in a lot of fights. But if I had a big ass friend like him, like they would protect me, and that's just kind of how it was. So I was always like friends with these bigger kids. Anyways, I was over at his house one day, and this guy walks in the door, and he's 6'5", he's 380 pounds. He's got the
6'5", 380 pounds.
dude is
And a guy. That's a
yeah,
that's a creature.
yeah,
That's a big boy.
yeah, dude, yeah, yeah. He was, and when I say that, you might get the wrong impression, but he looked like a capable man. Like he looked like he'd throw a hard punch. He didn't look like a slob, the guy looked like he wouldn't want to mess with him. So, but anyways, he walked in, and I remember being there. I was on these stairs, and I looked down, and he walks in, and he's like, "Hey," and I said, "Hey," and he's like, "You like playing video games? Yeah. You like football? Yeah. You like the Buckeyes? Yeah, I love the Buckeyes." He said, "Cool, man. You want to come up and hang out with us?" And so my friend Jacob was going up to his house. My friend Jacob had known him for a couple years at this point.
Okay.
And I go home. I ask my mom. My mom says, "Well, as long as you're going with Jacob, you're fine." Boom. So I take off, go up there, and he lives in Bluffton, Ohio, small little town, like 4,000 people. And he lives in this studio apartment. And so I walk in, and it's like a 9-foot ceiling. He's got acoustical ceiling tile ceiling, the big fluorescent lights that kind of go with that. It's really dark in there. There's a bunch of like clutter and trash all over the place. But when you first walk in, you turn to your right. This like right wall had like 3 TVs, 2 or 3 Xboxes. The back right corner had 2 desktop computers. The middle of the room had like a table where we played Dungeons and Dragons, like role playing stuff. And then there was the back left was where his bed, because it was a studio, so there was no rooms per se, but he had curtains hanging from the ceiling that would block off his bed.
So this is his place. So
this is his place.
How old is he?
He was about 30 at the time.
30 years old.
Yeah.
And you're 10?
Yep.
Okay.
And so when I was young, you got to realize, like, I never had a father, right? So it wasn't weird. Like, I just was like, yeah, let's go freaking play video games. And so I show up, and that was his setting. And I describe his apartment.
Did he have a job?
He did. Yeah. He worked at a factory. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just wonder who, with 30-year-old living in a studio, gaming kids.
Yep.
The way you described it, just,
yep.
Yeah, there's a lot. Okay.
Yeah. So it gets crazy. Trust me. So, yeah, I describe his studio for a reason, and I'll get into that later. But yeah, I mean, I would go up there every weekend basically for the next like foreseeable future and play video games, eat pizza, drink pop, coffee, energy drinks, whatever the hell I wanted to do, I could do it at his house.
You're a happy kid.
Exactly.
You're a happy kid,
dude.
You're not at home with mom up your butt and yelling and smoking dope and everything else. And you get to go have a little fun. Okay, I get it.
Yep. And so to add some more context to this, because it's very hard for me to tell my story because I was living two lives at the same time. And it was very, very tough. So once Monday through Friday, I was with my mom, right? And at this point, about 10 and a half, 11 or so, she had met a guy who got her hooked up on crack and cocaine. And there was a bunch of crackheads in my house, coke heads in my house. And I'm like literally abusers of those drugs, not just crazy people, but they were coming to my house every single day. They come in the front door. They go to the back and the bathroom. I mean, we had a bathroom that was about 3 feet long, just a tiny little bathroom. And I swear there had to be 15 people back there smoking.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, all day long. It was crazy. And thinking about it now, like the house always smelled really bad. But I was like 10 years old and I would see people so doped out on my couch. They looked like zombies, like sitting there sleeping.
Now, did you know that as a kid that they were doped out, or did you just think that was every day? That was normal to you?
No, I was so that's one thing. That's a good question. I get that a lot. And I was very situationally aware as a young man. I always knew it was wrong. I just knew it was wrong. And by the time I was about 10, I knew my life I was going to have a different life. I just knew I was going to have a different type of life. As a matter of fact, I knew that I was going to be something special. I saw everybody else doing everything around me. And I always told myself, like, that'll never be me. I will do something special in this world. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do now. But yeah, so like I said, Monday through Friday, I was coming home to the drugs. And then my mom started getting physically abusive to the point where she's like close hand punching us. The first time, I'll tell you, the first time she punched my sister in the mouth, I was sitting in my bedroom playing video games, and my sister's kind of talking to me. She's venting to me about an argument she had just gotten into. And my mom walks in, just suddenly, like, kicks the door open, looks to her right. My sister's head's right here, and my sister has a sucker in her mouth. And my mom, like, close hand, hammer fist, like, punch, boom, punches her in the face, like, hard, bounces her head off the wall.
What'd you do?
Well, I jumped on the other side of the bed, and I look up at my mom, and I'm like crying. I was like 10 years old. I was crying my eyes out immediately. Just emotions hit me hard.
Sure.
And I was always an emotional kid, but I jumped and I'm looking up at her, and I'm like, I'm like crying, broken. I'm terrified, man. And my mom hit her about 2 or 3 more times. And my mom looks at me, and the next thing she says is, "Why are you crying? Stop being a little bitch before I give you something to cry about." And when I tell that story to people, it's hard to believe, because it's like, you're 10 years old and your mom said that to you. Like, I don't believe it. And it's like, no, dude, like that shit happened, and then a couple weeks later, the first time I really got tore up by her bad was, I walked home from school and I shouldn't have, and I deserved an ass whooping for sure for that. But I remember the first time she hit me with that board, I knew it was going to be different. I was like, okay, like just immediately, like, it's crazy how much thinking you can do within a split second,
Sure.
But that's what happened. As I was just like, boom, this is different. She hit me a couple more times. I fell to my knees. She kept swinging. She hit me across the back 3 or 4 times with this wooden paddle, like this big wooden solid paddle, and tore me up. And the worst part about that, like the physical things are not that bad really. The worst part about it is when you look up at your mom, your protector, the person that you love, and they just look at you like, get the fuck out of here, go to your room, you know? And I'm like, I'm like looking up at my mom, like, I love you. Like, why? I just want you. I know I did something wrong, but like, just love me. And that's what I was lacking, which is the reason why kids end up in these bad situations most of the time. You know, most of the time, these kids end up hanging out with a 30-year-old man because they don't have anything at home, right? They're just looking for an escape.
Sure.
And that's what I had.
I got you.
So Monday through Friday, that's what I was living with. And, you know,
God, did you and your sisters ever talk about this with your mom? Like, did you guys ever like come together and say, hey, we need to get her some help, or let's talk to grandma, grandpa? I mean,
yeah. So great. I'm glad you asked that, because that leads right into the next part. So this house we lived in, this last house I lived in, I have pictures of it on my Instagram and on YouTube as well. Your bedroom should be your sanctuary, right? As a young man, like that's the place you go. Even if you got it good at home, when dad grounds you for whatever, you go up in your bedroom and you throw your shit and you scream into your pillow, and that's your place to be alone. Unfortunately, my bedroom in the dead of winter in Ohio, I had a hole in my ceiling, in the corner of my ceiling. It was about 3 feet wide, about 4 feet deep. I could see straight into the attic above, like the structure above. No insulation, like literally if it rained, water's coming in my room. And my mom put me in that room, no hesitation. She put some plastic wrap over the opening and called it a day. And I slept on a little 4-inch mattress, thin little blanket, and I pissed the bed every single night. I woke up freezing in my own urine every single morning, went to school, and was self-conscious because of those things, you know, because I was like, man, I smell like pee and people are going to make fun of me. I had holes in my shoes, and it was really, 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 really bad. And that time was bad, man. I mean, just that, the drugs, the abuse.
Did you know at that time though, the mom's just sick?
No.
Like mom is just a sick person, or do you think every mom was like this?
No, I knew my mom was jacked up. Yeah, I think,
you know what I mean?
yeah,
Like,
yeah. Before we got to that house, like I loved my mom deeply. And even then I still did, because it's your mom. It's that unconditional love. But at that point I knew that like we were being punished for no reason. Like this is unspeakably like horrible. Like this, I knew that nobody should be living like this.
Right.
And so to answer your question, did we ever say anything, or did we ever like collude together to like talk about it? Well, one day I told my sisters, like I was always the leader between the three of us. I'm the middle child, but I was always the leader. And I told them, I said, we need to talk to mom, because the day that I found a crack rock in our house, plus the crack pipe I had seen maybe a week or two prior out in the street, playing basketball one night, I knew it was time I knew I needed to say something. It's kind of crazy too, to think about this. At 12 years old, I addressed my mom with my sisters. I sat down with her and I said, Mom, are you using drugs? Are you using crack? Are you using cocaine? And
how did you know about crack and cocaine at that age? I mean, to be real, like, how did you know that's what that was?
Yeah, I don't know, man. The connection between finding out that she was smoking crack is kind of funny, because I remember when we were really, really young, we were walking somewhere, and I saw that wool steel that you used to like clean, that you used to use to clean dishes and things like that. It was one of those like oxy pads, or whatever they used to be called. And they're all over the place. If you ever go to like the ghetto or the hood or projects, it's all over the place, I guess. And I saw it on the street, and I was like, man, what's that? And my mom said, well, that's what crackheads use to smoke crack. And I was real young, and she said that to me. And so one night I was out playing basketball, and I saw this burnt pipe with that steel wool inside of it. And I was like, oh my God, my mom is smoking crack. You know,
she told you that. So let me ask you, as a child though, did you ever think about, have you ever tried it?
Nope.
Did you ever, you and your sisters, like want to experiment to see what mom's going through and what she's feeling? Because a lot of kids, I think, do that. And they, unfortunately, some of them don't turn out too well because of it. Right. But that is something that kids think about because they're curious.
Exactly.
I mean, especially being as young as you are, you know, say, you know, what is it like?
Yeah.
You know, what's all the hype about?
Yeah. So when I was 10, I tell this story a lot too. When I was 10, I was going up the stairs into my upstairs. It was like a summer day, or I gotten home from school. And I remember looking in the living room, And my mom was, like I said, was always smoking weed, was always drinking with everybody. I remember they always drank like Black Velvet and Pepsi. That was like the thing. And
Oh my
yeah,
God, Black Velvet.
Yeah.
That brings me back to a time in my childhood too.
Yeah.
My father used to drink Black Velvet.
Yeah.
And he worked for Pepsi. So.
Yeah. So they were always drinking that. And I remember looking in the living room one day though, and they're all smoking weed. But the reason why this day sticks out is because I think that's the first time I saw my sister smoking with them. And that's when I say I was young and I knew I was going to do something special, it was that day. Because I saw my older sister, who's just a year older, maybe 11 at the time, was smoking weed in a living room with a bunch of grown men. And I just knew that, like, that's not going to be me. I'm not going to be sitting around a living room smoking weed with a kid.
So you saw your sister doing this.
Yeah.
What did you do about that?
Nothing. I kept it moving. Nope. They kind of joked with me a little bit about like, oh, Seth, you want to hit this? And it happened like a couple times. And I was like, no, like, that's not me. And then it just kind of became the norm that Seth was not going to do this. Like Seth was I got perfect grades in school. He was the one. Like I was like the chosen one per se. And when we got to this other house, the last place I lived with my mom, my sister, at least my older sister, if not my younger as well, they were smoking weed like consistently, like with their friends. So, but I never did. As a young man, I at that age, I never did.
Well, I think the one thing that you're showing, and I hope some of the viewers out there, if they're younger, especially watching stuff, that you don't have to follow the leader.
Yeah.
Right. And unfortunately, the leader in your house wasn't a very good one.
Right.
So to speak.
Yep.
I don't like to judge anybody, but based on what you're saying and the knowledge that you've given me, it sounds like, you decided, hey, I want to go a different path.
Yeah.
This is not what I want.
Yep.
Unfortunately, it doesn't sound like your sister. It sounds like they kind of jumped on the bandwagon there a little bit. How'd they turn out?
I don't want to say anything bad about, they have not made the best decisions, just truthfully.
Yeah.
Me compared to them, I own a house. I have 2 nice cars. I have a wife and 2 beautiful children, and I can't say the same about them. And, they don't live they don't live a great life. I'll say that. I'm not going to bash them. I don't have any reason to. I don't have, and here's the thing too, is like, even though I'm telling my story, I'm not a hero. I'm not anything special. I don't look at myself like I'm above them at all. I just made better decisions, and that's what it came down to. So, but yeah, they got into smoking, and I never did, and I was always going to be that kid who just made it out, I guess. So we did address my mom about the drugs, and then as far as helping her goes, we were actually at our neighbor's house one day watching the show Intervention, and that was the show back in the day. I think they just re-aired it now.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So at the end of every episode, they would put their contact info out there and say, if you know somebody, boom. So we're looking at my neighbor like, hey, we know somebody who needs some freaking help.
Mm-hmm.
And no shit, that day I walk outside, there's a fire in my front yard, and my mom's boyfriend comes out. He's got blood all over the front of his shirt. He's like wearing a wife beater. And my mom comes out next, and she's like running around yelling and screaming and just going crazy. Next thing I remember is like a cop showing up, and she's in the back of a police car. And I'm in the middle of the street looking at my mom in the back of this police car at 12 years old. And she's trying to tell me like, I'll be back. I'll come get you. I'll, whatever. It's okay. And that day is one of the hardest days of my life. So that day, it felt like everything in my body was leaving me, like all my blood, all the energy that I had. I was having an out of body experience. It was a summer day, and I was freezing cold in the middle of the street. And when you go through an extremely traumatic event, a lot of people describe it the same way. And I found that out by listening to other people's stories. And this is kind of how they describe it. And it's just like all these emotions hit you at the same time, and it's just overwhelming. And so I remember just being hysterical. I was crying. I couldn't hold myself together, and the cop just takes her away, and like we're left at the house. And so my mom was taken away from me at 12, and for the next few months I would bounce around living with kind of different people. And I lived with my dad for like a few weeks. He was out of prison at that point. I lived with him for a couple weeks, and I got in a bunch of trouble at school, and I was about to go to alternative school. So I left his house. I moved in with like my cousins, and they were about to have a baby. So they basically told me at 12, after my mom was just put in jail and my dad I couldn't live with my dad anymore. They were like, you got to find somewhere else to go. I'm like 12 years old. I'm like, dude, like what the hell? Like, what am I going to do? You know? So I go live with some other random people, lived with them for a few weeks.
You know what? At that point, I mean, and there, unfortunately, there's a lot of people out there today, they're homeless.
Yeah.
And at that point, it sounds like so were you.
Yeah.
You know, where you don't have any hope at all.
Yeah.
Because the people that's closest to you, mom, dad, neither one of them, you can go home with either of them. Grandma, grandpa didn't want to take you in.
So I don't think they knew what was going on at this point.
Okay.
You know, it's funny you say the word homeless because I had a roof over my head for a long time, but I don't ever think I had a home. I mean, I can never think of a time where I walked in the house and I could smell food cooking and mom and dad were there and brother and sister. You know, it's a home.
You know what? It's so funny you say that because the little things like that we take for granted.
Yeah.
And, you know, for somebody like yourself who didn't experience that, you know, back in the day, you're right. You know, those things are common in a home, right? You know, even the fighting and the bickering, at least you got somebody to fight and bicker with, and stuff. But, yeah, I'm sorry that hit you. So this year bouncing around. So let's get back to Jacob, where this Jacob comes in this. So obviously you're bouncing around. This is, you're 10, 12 years old at this point.
Yep.
And, tell us about the gaming center and what's going on there.
Yeah, so in the midst of all that, I'm glad you brought me back because that's what makes it hard to tell the stories because both of these things were happening at the same damn time.
Hey, folks, this is WamBam at WamBams Podcast. I want to take a moment to thank our major sponsor, Cost Plus Processing, the leader in merchant processing. If you're a business owner and you're accepting credit cards or need to accept credit cards, reach out to Cost Plus Processing at 1-855-391-9190. That's 1-855-391-9190. And find out why they are the future in merchant processing. Now back to the show. You got a lot of damage that's back there in your brain that you have to relive, and I appreciate the fact that you're here today and you're going back in time, going through it, because I know it's not easy, and yeah, I'm sure you can get turned around in different directions. So, but yeah, let you know, bring us back to Jacob. I want to see where he comes in because I know how that ends.
Yeah, so still going up to his house. Jacob kind of stopped hanging out with me and the abuser. And it was really just me going up there alone now. And, you know, the first time he touched me, I was about 10.
Now, Jacob didn't ever physically touch you. This is your friend
that
brought you to the other gentleman's house.
Yeah.
The 30-year-old,
yep,
6'5", 385-pound guy.
Yep.
Who wants to play video games with you and give you pizza and do all the great things in life. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to make sure. Okay. What was his name?
His name is Armando Vasquez.
Armando Vasquez.
Okay. Yep. And so he's, you know, this is all public record. So
No, we'll get to that. So you're there with him and explain to first what happened, like the first encounter that he forced you into.
Yeah. So, Jacob actually was there that weekend. It was a Sunday and he left to go get some tacos. This was whatever. He went to go get some tacos. And so
must have been a Tuesday. Taco Tuesday?
It was actually, so back in the day, Taco Bell, I was about to say this. I was like, I'll leave that detail out. But Taco Bell had like a 50-cent taco day. Like every Sunday, like you get tacos. So anyways, that's what he did. So we went down and got like 40 tacos.
Gotta make light of it.
Yeah. So that's what we always did. And he goes to go get some tacos. And, you know, when I first started going up to this guy's house, we called him Mondo for short. When we first started going up to Mondo's house, I noticed that Jacob would go back and sleep in bed with him. And I would always sleep on the couch. And the way I looked at it was like, if I was sleeping over at a buddy's house, sometimes we share a bed, not a big deal. Like that's just how I looked at it. And it just never came off weird. So somehow I ended up sitting in this guy's lap all of a sudden. Like, and he was a massive guy, like I said, and I always ended up in his lap at some point, and it just became normal for me to go in there and sit on his lap, which is really weird. And on this particular Sunday, Jacob leaves to go get some tacos. I'm sitting.
How old's Jacob at this time?
He's 16. He's like 15, 16.
Okay, so he's older than you too. So you're 10, 12 years old. He's 15, 16.
Yep.
He's got a 30-year-old.
Yep.
So okay. All right. I'm trying to follow this whole thing.
Yep.
All right.
So Mondo has his left hand on my left hip. And I remember his hands he had these massive hands. and his knuckles were so dry and they were so like big and dry and nasty. He could take his hands and rub them, and it would sound like sandpaper. And he would always do that. That's like these weird things I remember about him. I remember he always wore Old Spice. I could smell it. When this happens to you, you can remember all these senses.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's important for me to remember these things and to describe these things, because when I tell these stories, it helps people realize, like, it helps them heal through it when they can kind of go back to those senses and defeat those senses in a way.
Does it trigger you, man? I mean,
No.
God forbid, you got a son now, right? But he
Yep.
goes into a department store, he walks into Macy's, and
Yep.
they spray some Old
Yeah.
Spice on him and stuff, and he comes up running to you, hey, Dad, how was your day at
Yeah.
work? And you smell that. Do you get triggered at all?
No, oddly enough, and we'll talk about this more later, but I've never gotten, not in the way that you think, like freaking out and panicking. I remember things. It does trigger memories, or does trigger like, oh, I know what that smells like. That smells like Mondo.
Mm.
Like, yeah, I do think about those things when those things happen, which is kind of unfortunate. But it's not I don't break down, like cry and just fall apart.
What did he make you do, man?
Yeah, so
Like, seriously.
yep. So his hand, so this is I'll get into the first time he touched me. His hand is on my hip. It falls off my hip. He grazes my ass, and he says sorry, and I said, oh, it's okay, like not a big deal, because it was like if me and you bumped in the hallway.
Yeah.
So then he puts his hand back on my butt and he says, so this is okay. And right there, I was like, okay, this is bad, and I knew it was wrong from the jump. And he said, this is okay, and I said, sure, and I just kind of accepted it, And so from there, it kind of progressed every time I went to his house. And basically, by the time I was 12 or 13, so about that time that my mom was taken away from me, I had experienced every sexual experience you can have with a grown man by the time I was 12, 13 years old. Like every single sexual experience you can have with a grown man. And
So what did he do? I mean, what
Yeah.
does a 6'5", 385-pound man do with a 12-year-old?
Yeah.
Like,
So first it works at, it's just like working his hand into my shorts. And he basically try to use his fingers on me, to penetrate me with his fingers. That was like a big thing all the time. It actually got to the point where it hurt so bad because of he had these big ass nails. And so I told him that. And so he was such a gentleman, he would trim his nails. So he'd shave his nails down so his nails wouldn't hurt. And then it leads into like oral sex and reciprocating oral sex. I can remember the first time I had an orgasm, and it was with this grown man performing oral sex on me. And when he's done, he looks up at me and he's like, did you enjoy that? And I'm just, I'm like laying in his bed at like 12 years old. And I'm like thinking to myself, like, dude, my life is over. So then it progresses to the reciprocation of that, right? Where I'm performing oral sex on him. And, there's times where he would ejaculate, and, there was a time where it hit me in the face, and, specifically in my eye. And I remember that because when I get up, kind of get up, and then he laughs at me and he says, oh, that was crucial. So then he proceeds to say that was crucial anytime something would happen in the future, it's like a little like jab at me, like that was crucial, right? He's like, you remember that, And so, yeah, things were getting pretty tough at that point.
now, you're talking about this, but at this point in time, are you upset about this, or are you just kind of going flow? Like, is he trying to penetrate you and you're crying and you're, or are you just okay with it? Like at that point, you think maybe you're bi or you're gay at that point? Like, what are your thoughts? Like,
Yeah, so great questions. One, I was in absolute hell the entire time it was happening. Anytime it happened, it was just an absolutely miserable time for me. I could never disconnect or disassociate with it. A lot of people talk about this stuff, and they talk about they go into a different world where they don't even feel it happening, or they don't realize it's happening, or
I think after a certain amount of time, you get used to that point. So then you have to block it out, right? I've heard that before from people that have, even with prostitutes and stuff like
Yeah.
that. I've heard some
Yep.
shows where, they talk about how do you do that?
Yep.
And they just put themselves in a different place mentally. But as a 12-year-old kid with a 385-pound guy on top of you, I mean, shit, luckily you didn't freaking crush you. I mean, let's be real. I mean, it had to hurt. It had to be like, were you crying? And you called him a gentleman. So I'm sitting there saying to myself, how could somebody penetrate in a child like that if you're crying and upset and he's continuing to do that and he's laughing and it's fun? How is he a gentleman, man?
Well, I say that so the reason why I say that is because it puts when you think of this guy, you probably think of some like crazy monster of a man that's just like a brutal person, and he wasn't. He was. If you met him, you would not suspect it. That's the reason why I say that, because he was so gentleman-like outside of all this shit. He was so personable. He was funny. He was extremely smart. But that's these kind of people. They are like that. They are the person that you never expect to do it. They do it, and so that's why I kind of spin that gentleman thing when I tell the story, is to get people to realize that he wasn't this like vicious man. You know, you wouldn't suspect this, and no, I mean, people
No,
did.
I think a lot of people, like, I understand that. Like, a
Yeah.
lot of people do that because they're outgoing people,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
You
Yeah,
know, they're funny. They want to be the attention. They're having a good time. And then, they just want to see how far they can go.
exactly.
And in this situation, it seems like a little bit turned into a little bit more, to turn into a little bit more to the point where, but did you ever say, no, this isn't okay and I don't want to do this?
Yeah, there was a lot of times where, like, you know, especially when he first starts introducing things, like when he's trying to penetrate me with his finger, you know, I'm like, no, 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 no. Like, I did not want to do it. And like I said, some people can disconnect, and they just let loose and go, and they let their minds go in a different place. I could never do that. I was fully present the entire time, and it was miserable. I mean, it's like staring at a wall for hours. You know, that's how it felt, because it just lasted forever. And yeah, so I could never disconnect. And so basically it was a lot of oral sex, reciprocating, me to him, him to me. And that was almost like every freaking weekend.
Now, how did you know about this? Like, did he walk you through this? Hey, this is what you do. I want you to do this to me. I mean, how did that come about? Are you watching? Is he watching porn or something? Like, how does it come out?
Yeah. So,
I mean, 12. I mean, I know today's there's a lot to the internet,
Yeah.
but you didn't have that back then.
yeah, well, so kind of crazy. When I was in like kindergarten or first grade, my mom had like a stash of like porn, and we found it and we started watching it. And
That's what it was. If you had videos or
Yep.
magazines back then, Playboy magazines,
Yep.
your parents might hide stuff, but nowadays the age these kids are young now, knowing and doing this stuff because they do have access to it.
And when I was like 10, I was not older than 11 years old, and my mom gave me a porno, like gave me a DVD that I could watch whenever I wanted, which obviously I learned a lot, but that will jack up your mind,
Sure.
especially
Well, you
at that
got
age.
questions after that.
Exactly,
I'm sure.
right. Yeah,
You're curious.
exactly. You're
Yeah.
very curious, but now I say all that. I was very curious with girls. I had no intentions of doing this with a man or whatever. It just, unfortunately, I was like in a trap position. And so, yeah,
But you never told him, no, stop.
no, I did. Yeah. Yeah. And
So what would happen then? Like, if you're like, stop, like,
yeah,
don't do this anymore.
he would stop, and then it would be like a guilt trip, kind of like, oh, you don't want to do this, or you don't like it. Like, what do you mean you don't like it? You liked it the other day, or was that too much, or this or that? And
Just kind of coaching you through it.
yeah, but yeah, it's just like if you're taking a girl on a date, and you reach in and give her a hug, and
So in his mind, you were his little boyfriend.
yeah, exactly. He would actually tell me, well, we just got to wait a few more years. Once you're 18, we don't have to hide this anymore. Like, that's how he would look at it. The guy was like demented, twisted, and he knew what he was doing for sure. One of the more disturbing things too, I think this is more disturbing than a lot of the things that happened, was he actually bought me a like leopard thong, and he made me wear that like around his studio as a little boy. I mean, that is disgusting on a whole nother level. And it's because it's just like, I don't even know the word for it. It's just like, just disgusting, man. So,
All right, Seth. So I gotta ask you a couple hard questions. I hope it doesn't trigger too much here, but the reality is, making you wear something like that or
Yeah.
do something like that. Did you start questioning your own masculinity? Did you ever question your own sexuality and, as a person at that point in time, and say, okay, maybe I actually kind of enjoying this. Maybe this is Was that a question mark of yourself? Was that a thing, or was it just you were just doing it because you were scared, or were you scared? Because it sounds like he was nice to you,
Yeah.
and I'm just kind of curious what was going through your head at this time. Because a lot of times people may go through something in life because they're afraid.
Yeah.
They're afraid for their life. They're afraid, hey, this guy's big. He could literally choke me out, right? And then what?
Yep.
And you really didn't have anybody really to talk to, which sucks.
Mm-hmm.
Thinking back of that, you can't go to mom, you can't tell her, can't tell dad.
Yep.
So I mean, what's going on in your head, man?
So like I said, I hated every minute of it. I never enjoyed any part of it. I enjoyed the friendship part when we were playing video games and eating pizza and having fun together.
Sure, who wouldn't?
Yeah, but the minute he would flip a switch and he would turn into this like obsessive child molester where he just wanted to get his in, that's when it was just absolutely miserable for me. I never questioned my sexual orientation or anything like that. I knew I wasn't gay. I know I'm not gay. I always like that. And that's what was really disturbing is like, I'm not gay.
Right.
And if somebody finds out about this, they're going to think I'm gay, because I'm like allowing this to happen. So that was my concern, truthfully, especially after the sexual things happened, was I was scared I was going to have HIV. I was scared I was going to have AIDS. I didn't know how any of that stuff worked.
Oh yeah.
And I was scared about that for like 10 years because even when I joined the army and I got blood tests, I was like, shit, man, I hope this don't come back. And then I would always think about like, oh man, what if they like tested it wrong and it does come back in 3 more years, So I was always scared about those things. That's what I was worried about. And specifically, the first time he, I guess I'll say like raped me or penetrated me or whatever. I remember that night, I remember being there on my hands and knees and just freaking a little 12, 13-year-old boy naked in his bed. And he did what he needed to do. And when I remember him finishing and then he took a towel, kind of cleaned me up. And I went off to the bathroom and I sat, that night was one of the worst nights of my life. Again, I sat in his bathroom on his toilet, trying to get everything out of me. And, dude, when you're going through that shit and then you don't even want to go home, you don't even want to go home because what's going on at home, right? You're getting your ass beat. There's drugs. So you're just freaking terrified of everything in your life. And I remember sitting there thinking like, my life is over. I'm worthless at this point. Like I probably have AIDS. I probably have something wrong with me. If anybody finds out about this, they're going to, they're going to bully me. I'm going to kill myself. I mean, I thought about killing myself every single day.
Sure.
And, so yeah, that was bad, man. And I never enjoyed any bit of it. And some people now, your body, when it's aroused, you will have orgasms. And that's just that's the really hard part about it, is that you will have orgasms and it's inevitable. Sometimes. And so that stuff was hard to understand, but I did understand that, like, I understood that for some reason at that young age. I was just aware. I knew what was wrong. And I just, I mean, I was just surviving at that point.
So how long is this going on?
So yeah,
and let me ask you this, Jacob, your friend Jacob.
Yep.
Now, did you ever approach him about this guy?
Yeah. So
about Omar, is that was it?
Armando.
Armando.
We called him Mondo.
Mondo.
Yep. So when I was 12, my mom was taken away. I bounced around a few houses. My grandparents ended up getting a hold of me before I turned 13. So about 4 or 5 months after I left my mom, and my grandparents asked to adopt me and my sisters. I said yes. My sister said no. They went back and lived with my mom. I don't know why, but they did. And so,
well, we know why. She was letting them smoke and they were hanging out and doing what they want to do.
Exactly. Yeah. So they were just doing a bunch of dumb shit. And I knew I didn't want any part of that. My grandparents, like I had an opportunity to live with real people, and like I took it. So my grandparents adopted me when I was 13. That's when everything went through. I remember getting off the bus my 13th birthday and getting home, and we had a big birthday party, and Mondo was actually there, and I think my dad was there too.
Now, did your grandparents know at this time that he had done this stuff to you?
No. And even when my grandparents took me in, I told them, I said, I want to go hang out with my friend. And this guy was so manipulative that even when I moved in with my grandparents, I was like, oh, this might be a chance to get away maybe. But he would convince you that like, oh, I need you in my life. I'm going to kill me. I'm going to kill myself if you don't come and see me, stuff like that. And that's a lot to handle as a 13-year-old or 12-year-old. And so I told my grandparents said, hell no, because they knew what happened to me when I was like 5. Right. So I told him like, oh, he's not like that, whatever. So he shows up, they meet him, and he makes them laugh, and boom, we're right back in the same shit again. So it happens for, it goes on for another couple years. When I was about a month away from being 16.
So hold on, you're saying it goes on for a couple years.
Yeah.
So this a daily thing? This a weekly thing? What kind of what kind of relationship is this now?
Every single weekend.
So every single weekend it was just kind of like it's Friday time.
Yep. Every single weekend he'd come and pick me up Friday after school, or early Saturday morning, and I would basically almost every Friday night and Saturday night for about 5.5 years, give or take the couple holidays. And so we're talking probably 300 to 400 like separate occasions of sexual abuse.
Now, are you still playing video games, having pizza, or no?
Yeah.
Now you're going right to the bedroom.
No, we would go up there, and we would still kind of hang out and play video games, but it did get a lot less as it progressed, and as it got to like an obsession, it did get a lot less. Like as soon as we got up there, it was like you could feel the pressure. Like I just wanted to play freaking video games. When 8 o'clock hit, 9 o'clock hit.
Did you ever cringe though that he was coming to get you? Like it's time, like I'm trying to get into your brain. I mean, I'm a little bothered by it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I appreciate, because I know I'm bringing you back to bad space, but it just baffles me that, hey, I'm here to pick you up, and you kind of know, all right, this is what the end result's going to be, because you're pretty much doing that every single weekend.
Yep.
Was there ever a time where you just said, no, I'm not going, or did you go to your grandma and say, hey, this guy's doing this to me? When did this come to an end?
Yeah, so there was one time I tried to stop it when I was living with some people, and they were like a family. It was a mom and dad. They had several kids, and because I lived with them and I had a family, and they treated me like a family, and they were actually going to adopt me. They offered to adopt me because of what was going on with my mom. And one weekend he was like, "Are you coming up this weekend?" I said, "No." I said, "I have a family now. Like, I don't need to hang out with you every weekend. I don't need you. Like I said, I don't need you the way I used to." And he said, "Oh, you don't need me anymore." And it's just like this freaking vicious cycle of just getting in your freaking head. And so I was like, well, that's not what I meant. And boom, right? So like I almost like made the disconnect, and then he got me. So to get to the end of this whole thing, when I was about a month away from being 16, I was up at his house. I was playing video games one night on the computer, and I had a younger friend with me. That was
So you're 16. You driving now?
almost 16. I
Okay.
was 1 month away from being 16.
Okay.
And I'm up there playing video games, and my younger friend is there with me. He's about 2 years younger than me. And he was never allowed to go to that house unless I was there. His parents were like, "No, you're not going unless somebody else is with you." And they trusted me. So he goes back in the bed with him. This is the first time that I remember my friend going back in the bed with him. And a little bit more context behind this. This guy would make jokes about, like, excuse my language, but he would make jokes about like me in front of other people, in front of like the friend group that we had. He'd be like, "Oh, I'm going to go home and Seth tonight," or Seth's going to, yeah. And people, and like adults with kids would be like, "Ha ha ha, Mondo's going to go home and blow Seth or Seth." Like, no shit. And we all just like laughed it off.
Who's in this group just laughing?
Just some adults that we hung out with. Yeah.
Are they doing the same shit? Must be. I mean, it's unfortunate, and I'm sorry to ask these questions, but it blows my mind, because I know statistics, they say like 1 in every 4 person, has gone through this.
Yep.
Right. But hasn't come out. And that's just people that have talked about it.
Yep.
So, and a lot of times it's people that are close to you.
Yep.
They're close in the circle that you don't realize that are doing this stuff. I mean, when you got people that are sitting there literally in the same room laughing and joking about it, they're probably in on it as well.
Yeah. 95% of the time, you either get molested or murdered, the person. I think that's what the statistic is. Either 95 or 85%. 1 in 10 report being molested. 1 in 4 women, or excuse me, 1 in 4 men, and 1 in 3 women are molested or abused sexually at some point in their life.
I mean, those are staggering statistics.
Yeah, man. It's
that don't lie, obviously. So
to get to the reporting of it all, my friend goes back there. And I'm thinking to myself, like, fuck this. Like, I'm not letting this happen to my friend. And so I messaged Jacob on the video game. He's playing the video game with me. I messaged him on the game, and I said, "Hey, man, I need you to come over tomorrow." And I said, "It's really important." And he says, okay, got it. That's all he says. And as soon as he says that, Mondo comes out of his bedroom area. And, I scrolled up in the chat real quick, like I'm trying to hide something, and Mondo comes out, and this guy's really smart. And he's like, what are you doing? And I said, well, oh, nothing. He's like, who you playing with? Nobody. And I think he saw the message that I had sent to Jacob, and because the whole mood shifted that night, and I thought he was going to murder me. Like, no shit. I thought I was going to die that night.
Let me ask you real quick, okay? Because now you got my mind going in different directions. Is Jacob doing shit with him too? Are they together? Are they doing sexual contact as well? Do you know this or not?
I don't know.
Do you suspect this? Because
nope.
Could Jacob have called him and triggered him to let him know that, hey, you reached out to him and maybe your gig is up because now you're talking about it? I mean, I don't know. It's just a theory I'm coming up with.
Yeah. So now, it's crazy that you say that, like, now thinking about it, it's like, well, man, that could have been, but we'll get into this. He comes out and he's kind of like, he's on edge, and I'm thinking, I'm about to get murdered. Like, I'm pretty sure he saw what I said. And if he saw that I messaged somebody and asked him to come over, he's going to know something's up, And so I'm freaking terrified the whole night. Thankfully, we make it home. He doesn't.
Did he ever tell you he loved you?
Oh yeah, all the time. Oh yeah,
he ain't gonna murder you. He loves you.
Yeah. I mean, we said it back and forth all the time. Like, he would.
You said it back to him too?
Yeah, I would say it to him. He'd say it to me, and that was like a hard thing to do, like, all the time. Was tell him that. Did
he force you to say that, or is this something that you did?
I would say force, yes, but how do you force somebody to say that? You force them by manipulation, man. It is a twisted thing because it literally changes your brain. Like, my brain physically is different because of what happened to me.
It's gotta be.
Yeah. So, so we make it home the next day, and I get to my grandparents' house, and Jacob comes over, and we're walking around, we're talking, and then I go to my bedroom, and I'm walking back and forth in my bedroom, and I'm like, Jacob, like, look, man, like, I've been trying to tell you this for a long time. Like, I've been really wanting to say this. I'm kind of pacing back and forth, and I'm like, I just don't know what to say, and I get choked up. I can't talk, like, can't get the words to come out of my body. And out of nowhere, he goes, he touched you, didn't he? And I turn and look at him, and then I fall apart. I fall to the floor. I remember I had hardwood floors, and I fell apart, man. And it just felt like the same day that my mom was taken away from me, the same night that he raped me. I had all those emotions pile up again, and I'm on my floor crying my eyes out, sweating profusely, like, just my world was over. Like, it was over. And the next thing he says to me is, he did it to me too. And let me remind you, like, Jacob is like my hero.
Right.
Okay. Jacob's like this, like, he's older than me. He's like he's the closest thing to a father I've ever had. He was my protector. And so when you think about your father, you think about the strongest man that this will never happen to him, So if they told you that, you'd be like, what the hell? And that's what I was like.
Well, you said he was 16 and the guy was still 30, double his age.
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah. So
what did Jacob talk more about that? Like, did that happen one time? Did it happen a lot? What?
Yeah. Okay. So I didn't really know the full extent of his situation at that point, but Jacob says, what do you want to do about it? He says, do you want to report him or do you want to keep it a secret? He's like, I'll follow your lead, man. Like, whatever you want to do. And I said, fuck this. We got to report this guy. And so, because I was like, I'm not going to let this happen to my younger friend who Jacob also knew. I was like, I'm not going to let this happen to anybody else. Because the crazy thing about this guy too is that he ran a haunted house every Halloween in the small town Bluffton, Ohio, with like 4,000 people on Main Street. And like, to this day, you can message people from Bluffton and ask them about that haunted house, and they all know about it. And they're all excited for it every year. And every year he'd be at the end of the haunted house while every little kid in that town came through, and he'd be sitting there handing them all candy. So think about that. Like, how many freaking people he probably freaking raped or whatever. And
or wanted to.
Yeah, exactly. So we go out to my grandparents. We tell my grandparents.
I mean, that's just a sickness. I mean, let's just be honest. Like, that's just sick, right?
Yeah,
I mean, he's got a sickness. He's got an issue. He's got a problem. And nobody's calling him up on it because he's getting away with it.
Yeah.
Type of thing.
Yeah, man. So we go out and we tell my grandparents. my grandma's destroyed because this is the second time it's happened to me now, and we let this guy in our house. Like he was at our Christmases, Thanksgivings, like all these things. So she's destroyed, and we go to the hospital. I remember the nurses were particularly happy with me, and I'm proud of this myself because somehow at 15 years old, I knew to not take a shower and I knew to not change my clothes because he had molested me that weekend, and so I needed his DNA on me. So we get to the hospital, and I told them, I said, "Well, I still have all my clothes on, and he molested me this weekend, so you can test me right now, and I guarantee you'll find his DNA." And they did, and they found it. They found his DNA in like 2 or 3 places.
Mm.
The officer was there, and
Now, are you scared at this point, or
um,
are you kind of relieved?
relieved. Yeah,
Because you've been hiding this in. You've been holding this in for 5-6 years. Then
yeah,
you're
yeah,
going through this.
yeah. So I was scared at one point because that day he goes back to my house for some reason while we were at the hospital, and that was kind of scary. I thought he was going to kill my grandma because he had never returned back to my house. Whenever he dropped me off, he was gone, but for some reason he came back to my home. I don't know why, and it might have been that like he was tipped off somehow by seeing that message. I don't know, but he came back to my house, and then he like my grandma was on the phone with my grandpa, and me and my grandpa are at the hospital, and my grandpa's like, "Get the shotgun," and the cop will tell you today, and my everybody else who was there, my family, that they could tell you, I went into a freaking rage when I found out he was back at my house because I thought he was gonna kill my grandma. I mean, I was ripping my clothes apart. I was taking my fingers and like trying to break my fingers. I was pulling my hair out. I mean, I was freaking the hell out. And yeah, so he gets arrested that night, and about a month later, I find out that he gets 10 years in prison. That was in 2011.
All right. So let me ask you real quick. Did you see him after he was arrested?
Never
Did
saw
you
him.
have to identify him?
Nope.
Did you have to go in front of him and court? Nothing. You never had to see him again.
Never had to see him again. Yeah. So,
Did he try to? Did he try to reach out to you, even being in prison?
no,
Okay.
no, not that I know of.
I was wondering.
Yeah, he got 10 years. That's a good question. Yeah, he got 10 years, and it is 2024, so he'd be out today, walking the streets, doing whatever the hell he wanted to do. So, fortunately enough, he died of a staph infection, I think, in 2019, about a year before he was supposed to get out. So good for him.
A little justice served there.
Exactly. Yeah. So I do regret not being able to go in the courtroom and look him in his eyes and just tell him like, I got you. Like this right here. Like, don't make no mistake about it. It was nobody else, but it was me. Like that's one thing I wish I could have done is to look him in his eyes. And people say like, no, you don't want to do that. I'm a different person.
Yeah, I think you're trying to clear some of your conscience too. Like you got a lot hidden
Yeah.
inside. I mean, you spent 6 years allowing things to happen
Yeah.
where you're probably questioning yourself.
Yeah.
Like, do I actually enjoy this?
Yeah.
What,
Yeah.
and you got to question, but like I said, you didn't have very good role models
Right.
to really look up to, and you only went with what you knew.
Yep.
And unfortunately, what you knew at that time wasn't really good.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was it though. I mean, I reported him, and what's even crazier about following that is I never went through any therapy. I never had any formal therapy. I never saw a doctor.
How you going to therapy right now?
Yes.
I mean, talking about it and doing what you're doing, just being able to.
Yeah.
Because I got some more questions that
Yep.
I'm curious about, especially after the fact.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't wish death on anybody, but God's going to take you when you're supposed to. So it sounds like he got what was coming to him. But how has it affected you, even moving forward? Because now that you're putting your story out there, people walking on the street, they know you.
Yep.
They know, hey, this man's, he got raped by a 385-pound man, and stuff. But yet, is he gay? Is he not gay? Do you think about that when you were in the military? I mean, first of all, thank you for your service.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And being in Afghanistan, fighting for us and stuff. Like you've done some really honorable things that, with your life after the fact. Has this affected you in any way? Or are there reasons why you did certain things because of this? Or is this just coming out now? Or did people know this while you were in the service and so forth?
Nobody's ever known about this until about 3 weeks ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago.
So this is fresh. This is new.
Yeah.
This is coming out. How are you going to how do you think you're going to be able to handle that? Or if people come up to you and try to make fun of you or say, things about you and stuff, or look different on you. I mean, how is that going to impact you at all? Are you prepared for that?
So that's a great question. Because I'm getting ready to publish my book, I'm about 6 months away, 8 months away from publishing my book probably. And so that's the thing I was scared.
I get a signed copy, right?
Absolutely.
All right, awesome.
Yeah. When I was getting about 3 weeks ago, about 4 weeks ago, I was getting very bad anxiety because I was like, I'm getting closer to telling people. And I had the same thoughts, like, and I work in an office, people,
Right.
people watch YouTube, people
There you go.
may see this
Right.
podcast, right?
Yeah,
And they might look at me like, what the hell's wrong with this guy?
sure.
And if they have those views, it is what it is. That shit doesn't bother me anymore. Now, 4 weeks ago, I was having some pretty bad anxiety about it. And what I did though was I told myself, this is not about me. This is about everybody else. This is about the people that are going to watch this video, hear my story, and be like, holy shit, I'm not alone.
Well, not only that, but this is going to help inspire some of those kids that are going through the same thing
Yep.
to speak up. They're not going to wait 6 years of going through hell every single day, wanting to kill themselves,
Yep.
okay, or not be a part of society anymore because they feel like they're just a toy, type of thing. So, I mean, like I said, the amount of courage that you're showing is tremendous. Like, I mean, I can't even, there's nobody can ever challenge that. But
Yeah.
the world is vicious.
Yeah.
And there's some mean ass people out there, no matter where you go, there are some mean ass people and they're going to say some mean things and you're going to hear it. And unfortunately, being a man now, you got a family, you got a wife, beautiful kids, how is it going to affect them? How is it going to affect your kids at school? They start getting laughed at and say, your daddy got, was gay, or your daddy got, he had sexual intercourse with another man
Yeah.
and stuff. And, how does that affect, is that, I know it's going to play in your heart. It's got to, but the reality is the outcome of what could supersede it and the amount of people you can help. Obviously, like we said, you said statistically 1 of every 3 women
Yeah.
and 1 in every 4 men
Yeah.
are going through this.
Yeah.
So if you can get them to speak out sooner, you can stop the cycle maybe.
Yeah. So, that's a good question too, man. I have not thought about that as much now that you brought it up. But if people approach my children about it, this is something I've told my daughter now. She's 5, so she's in kindergarten, and she's got like a little bit of a bully at school right now, like on the bus or whatever, some kid or whatever.
Yeah.
And I just tell her, hey, what do you say back to him? She's like, nothing. I said, okay, that's good. I say, if anybody says anything to you or does something to you or is mean to you, I just want you to know that they probably are missing somebody at home.
Yeah.
They're probably missing mom. They're probably missing dad. There's a reason why they do that. So when people are mean to you, I just want you to hope and to wish better for them. That's all I want. And my kids they don't know about this yet. They wouldn't understand it. And I'm not scared to tell them, their time's going to come. They're going to find out and they're going to know that daddy went through some hard things, but daddy's okay. And daddy's a strong man now. And I'm doing good things and saving lives and doing the best that I can to help other people move forward in this world. And that's what I'll tell my kids. There's nothing wrong with me. These things happen and there are bad people in the world. And that's something that you need to tell your children. So if people have anything negative to say, which you're absolutely right, people are going to call me all kinds of names. Hell, they might see this video and say what they got to say. That's okay.
All right.
Yeah, they say what they got to say. You pick it up and keep moving. Like I said, it's not about me. You can say whatever the hell you want to say about me. It's not about me. It's about everybody else. When I just spoke to these kids last week at the University of North Georgia, I had about 6 of them come up to me crying after I was done talking. And even if my book sells 1 copy or my Instagram gets 1 like, I had 6 freaking lives I impacted on that day. Just one day.
Right.
And I'm telling you, man, I've been in those shoes where I've had somebody come and talk to me and it made me cry. And I can think about all the people in my life, like my wrestling coach, for example. I can think about the impact that he made on me. And I just went and saw him again for the first time in 13 years. And I couldn't even talk to him. I walked up to him. He said my name. I hugged him and I cried in his arms for about 30 minutes. And I kept telling him that he saved my life. I kept telling him over and over again, you saved my life. You saved my life. You have no idea how important you are to me. The fact that I may potentially make that impact on somebody, or I maybe made that impact last week on 6 freaking lives, it does not matter what anybody says about me. It's not about me. It's about everybody that I can help and save.
Hey folks, this is WamBam at WamBams Podcast. I just wanted to let you know that we've launched our website and merchandise is now available to you. That's right. We have hats, we have t-shirts, we have hoodies. The hoodies have been going off the shelf already. The Stay Positive hoodies. That's right. Stay positive, folks, and keep tested negative. As you know, go to our website at www.wambamspodcast.com. That's www.wambamspodcast.com. Now back to our show. Yeah, I'm. It's so well said. I can't even, can't even go there. You talk about the bullying and what people say, and people are going to say negative things. And what I would tell your daughter if somebody says something negative of her or your son, I always say thank you.
Yeah.
When somebody says something bad to you, you call me a name. You're fat, or you're ugly, or you're that. Thank you,
Appreciate
thank you. And it kind of throws them off guard. Like, why are you thanking me? I just said something bad to you. Yeah, thank you. Because in the back of my mind, two reasons why I'm saying thank you. Number one, I'm staying positive, right? Which we always want to do. But number two, I know exactly what I don't want to be.
Yeah.
Okay. And I know exactly how mean that is and how it affects somebody now that I've experienced it from you. So therefore, I'm not going to pass that on, type of thing.
Yep.
So I think that's important. How do you think, talk about the gay community and stuff, being that you're in, scenario and stuff. Do you have any animosity towards men with men?
Nope.
Or, you still got friends that, are gay and don't look at them anything different because this one guy molested you.
I don't think I have any friends that are gay, but I don't.
You might find some. You might find that you do know.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll come out and tell you.
Yeah. Look,
which is fine too.
Yeah. I don't give a shit about none of that. Like, whatever you do with your life, as long as it's not negatively affecting somebody else, you do what you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
That stuff, I'm not going to let things like that bother me or even if people in the world, like certain activists or groups or whatever, are trying to do things that I don't agree with, as long as it's not impacting me and my community directly and my children, I'll just let them go. Because a lot of these people that are trying to get clout by doing outlandish things, not saying that that's the gay community, but just people doing weird things in general. Like for example, advocating for pedophilia. There's groups out there that advocate for it, right? Where they're like, they claim to be a 12-year-old boy so they can have sex with other 12-year-old boys. Okay. You are wrong, first off. So that is just wrong. And the people who do that, they have a loud voice because that's what social media gives them. But in reality, they're a very small portion of the population. So as long as I don't pay them attention, it does not affect me.
Well, I think what you said, there's wrong and there's right.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
I mean, honestly, I don't want my 12-year-old boy having sex with a 12-year-old girl.
Yeah.
Girl or boy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Let's just be real.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's too young. It's not it's not appropriate. And that's the education these kids need today. But unfortunately, with the internet and have access to, so much that's out there, everybody wants to dip their finger in and try and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's real powerful, your message and what you've gone through. I know the pain that you have inside and thinking about how it could impact your family that maybe you didn't think about. But obviously God, came through you to speak on this, and you're a survivor because the life that you had, you easily could have went the wrong direction. It could have went the other way. Yeah, you could be an addict. You could continue to be a victim, and you finally stood up for yourself. So I can commend you in that. And, and obviously, like I said, that probably goes with your character, why you are the person you are today. You said you were the chosen one, and it's seeming like that was the case. Knowing you went to the military, came in the Army, going to Afghanistan. How long did you serve for us?
I was in the Army for 8 years.
8 years. Yeah. So, very successful being over there during some rockets flying around you.
Yeah.
Right. So, appreciate again your service. You're doing that. I know you've done some great things with the construction, and you've done some good things with speaking and stuff. Tell a little bit about your journey now after and what you have planned for your future.
Yeah. So I served in the Army for 8 years. That was cool. That was the best decision I ever made. It gave me a lot of structure, and it also gave me a lot of father-like figures in my life, a lot of strong men to coach me and get me, because I was a shithead for a long time. I mean, up until about my daughter was born, I was a victim. I had a victim mentality. Everything was everybody else's fault. And I finally flipped the switch right before my daughter was born. So I credit the Army a lot with that. There's certain people in the military that I particularly remember that helped me. But yeah, I got out of the Army in 2021. I got into a really good construction job. I worked for the third largest home builder in America. It's funny, when I got there, the guy had won the construction manager of the year 2 years in a row, and he was promoted to be my boss, and I told him good job for being promoted because I was coming for your spot. And my first year in that company, I was the construction manager of the year. About 3 months later, I was the number one ranked guy in the entire country for that company.
Nice.
Out of over 1,000 guys. That was really cool to see. And this is really why I tell my story, because my whole life I had lost, right? My whole life I've been getting my ass kicked. And for the first time in my life, for over 52 weekends in a row, or because every Friday this dashboard would come out. For the first time in my life, Seth Gehle's name was at the top of this freaking list with like 1,000 other people below him, like literally 1,000 other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm like thinking to myself, like, man, every weekend somebody's got to look at this shit and see my name at the top. Like, it feels good, you know?
Yeah.
So I won that award, and I got to go out to Vegas, and I won the highest honor award from the National Association of Home Builders, which is the Chairman's Award. I won that. So I got to go out there and speak to a room full of millionaires, and those awards, nobody knows what that award is. You couldn't Google.
I actually know what it is. I was out there. I was
Okay,
at the Builder Show.
Cool.
Out there in Vegas.
There you go. So I got to go out there.
I also have a building company as well. BR
Awesome.
Builders. That's right. Big shout out, BR Builders.
Yeah. So you're the first person I've met that actually has any kind of even bit of knowledge. But that award was so important to me because when I was up there in Vegas, you know, people see me get up on the stage, they're like, "Oh, good job, you won an award."
Right.
But it's like, you guys
That's a big deal.
have no idea how far I've come to be on this freaking stage. And if I had went back 15 years ago and told that kid, just hang on, man, like it's going to pay off, you know, you wouldn't, there's nothing you could tell me at 15 or 12 that would make me believe that I'd be on a stage in Vegas, you know?
Right.
So, super cool. And then, yeah, so I won that in Vegas, and
you got 2 kids.
Yeah.
Going for a third, or no? You're done.
We're done.
You're done.
We are done. Yeah.
So, you know, let's just talk about how this impacts your life.
Yeah.
Your child comes home. He wants to go, you know, he's got a friend named Jacob. Just so happens his name's Jacob.
Sure.
And he wants to go play, and they want to play video games. How's it going to impact you? Like, what happens? What goes through your brain at that point in time? Does it bring you back, or if you kind of let it go, do you release it?
I'm definitely protective of my kids for sure. I mean, today's just different too, though. I mean, I say that like 20 years ago, you could ride your bike 2 miles, 3, 4, 5 miles away from the house. I say that even though I was going through all this shit. Maybe I shouldn't have been doing that. I don't know, but
no, you're right. There definitely was a day you could ride your bike outside and not worry.
Exactly.
Today, you're afraid of having your kids outside because you don't know where they're at and who's going to take them and snag them. You got, you know, kids being stolen and sold and trafficking and all kinds of stuff going on out there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a different world. So in that regard, I try not to be a helicopter parent. I really try not to. But on the same token, I would rather protect my children and be a little overprotective right now because of the society and the market for stealing kids is so crazy right now. I have a beautiful little 3-year-old blue-eyed blonde hair boy. Like, I don't know how much he'll go for and what people will do to him around this world, but they'll do horrendous things to him. And I'll be damned if something happens to him, you know? So I am protective of them. You know, I don't like people touching my kids. They're not trophies. We don't go to places and they don't want to hug somebody. Good. You don't have to hug that person. You know, I don't care if it's grandma and grandpa. You don't have to hug them. They make you feel weird. Good. You don't have to hug them, you know?
Do you think a lot of that comes because of what you went through though? Because sometimes it's a gesture. Grandma, I mean, it's a gesture of love, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm Italian, so you know, we hug everybody. That's what we do. You know, it shows our affection. But so do you hold that against somebody because you got this guard up now?
I don't call it a guard. I'm just not naive. And I respect boundaries, right? So if my daughter doesn't want to cuddle, okay. And it's the same thing for me. It might sound harsh, but if my daughter comes up and sits on my lap and I just want to sit alone, hey, Brooklyn, get off my lap. I want to sit alone right now. It's respecting boundaries. You got to teach your kids boundaries. If you force your kids to hug everybody, what's going to happen when so-and-so wants a hug and then it's a little bit more than a hug? Well, okay, I guess I'll do this because this is normal. Like, I got to love him because he's my uncle. or he's my grandpa, so I got to sit on his lap, you know? So
True.
I'm not
And that
crazy
happens.
protective. I'm
And
just
that
not
happens.
naive. Yeah.
Yeah, that happens. You know, I'd like to, if it's okay with you, I'd like to kind of open this up to the viewers, because I'm sure anybody watching this podcast today has some questions, or maybe have some questions I didn't get to answer, and,
Sure.
and curious. Some unanswered questions that maybe they want answers to. If it's okay with you, I'd like them, go ahead and comment down below a question or two. And, we'll have maybe a second segment where we can, once we collect all these, questions, if there are any, and we'll give them some answers. Would you be willing to do that?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
So if you're watching this podcast and you got some questions for Seth, go ahead and put it down in the comments. Just, be nice about it, be courteous about it, but go ahead and ask it. If it's on your mind, ask it. Seth's been pretty open about everything, and I'm pretty sure that he'll continue to do that for you. So,
Yeah.
do you have anything you want to tell the viewers before we break this up?
The last thing I would say is, although these bad things happen to me, and they happen to everybody, or not everybody, but they do happen to a lot of people, I've gone on to do tremendous things in my life. And like you said earlier, where some people feel like they may not be a part of society, or there's no place for them, I am an example that you do belong in this world. No matter what you've been through, where you've come from, you got a single parent household, you grew up on welfare, you've been abused physically, sexually, emotionally, whatever, you've been homeless, you belong in this world. And all it takes is a little bit of hard work and some heart. And I've done amazing things. I mean, hell, I've run ultra marathons. I compete in jiu-jitsu. Like you said, I'm a husband, I'm a father. I got 2 beautiful kids. I've won national awards. I've done incredible things in my life. And for a long time, I just did not think I belonged. And I do. And everybody does. That's my message to the world now, is you can get through hard shit. You just got to have some heart and freaking be mentally tough. I mean, it's hard.
Amen. Amen. Well, there you have it, folks. And you heard it right there from Seth himself. Remember, no matter what situation you're in, it doesn't define you today. Okay? It doesn't define your future or who you become. You can become anything that you want to become. There are people out there in the world that actually care, that you can actually reach out to and become exactly what it is that you want. And like I always say, if your life was a movie, would it be worth watching? And if the answer is no, then stop being ordinary and start being extraordinary. And remember, as always, stay positive, baby, and keep testing negative. Until next Wednesday, I'm your boy WamBam, and I'm out. This podcast was brought to you by Cost Plus Processing, the leader in merchant processing. Call 1-855-391-9190 and find out why they are the future in merchant